Let the Lord guide you through your heartache. He will create a new path. How do you keep moving forward after losing the love of your life? Singer-songwriter-producer Michele Capps and the wife of the late 61-year Grand Ole Opry band guitarist Michele Capps is on a new path, and her path encourages others to do the same. This is her story. This is today's Nashville. This is Faith. Michele, it's a blessing to sit down with you. Welcome to today's Nashville.
Thank you, Terry. It's an honor to be with you.
You know, it's a small world.
Yes, it is.
I met you. I was dragging my husband out on the Christmas season. I said, we're going to go to a party. To friends of ours, Keith and Emmy Jo Bilbrey.
Yes.
We were backing in to the grass area, and I said, Ted, you're too close to the next person. I said, they're not going to be able to get out. And he's like, I've got it. And we squeezed out, and I'm like, I'm talking to a beautiful woman, and it's like, can you even get out of your car? I'm so sorry. And it was you.
It was me.
It was you.
It was me. And of course, you know, I knew who you were, but we had never met. And
you didn't know at the time, though.
No. And so I was like, oh my goodness, they're getting pretty close to us, you know.
I know.
And the lady that was with me is my dear friend Hazel Daniels, Charlie Daniels' wife. And,
did she say something about it?
No. She was just like, because she couldn't see as well, you know, how close that I was. But anyway, it was fine. It worked out fine.
And you're like, oh no, we're fine. I could barely get out. But Ted's like, hey, I've got it under control. But that was a great night. I got to meet you and so many people. And I've heard about you. I've heard about your story. You were married to Michele Capps,
yes.
And everybody kept saying, you have to have Michele.
Oh.
And you have amazing story of faith. So just tell me about it.
Well, we were so blessed. You know, we met in the studio. I came here to record, and I met him at that session, but we were friends, you know. Of course, immediately we, you know, became friends.
Well, tell me who Jimmy is first.
Well, Jimmy is a legendary guitar player, and he played on everything from Stand By Your Man to The Gambler, and He Stopped Loving Her Today, and
everybody wanted him.
He played, but he came here as a teenager with the Louvin brothers. But Jimmy played, not only did he play on so many sessions, but he played on a lot of television shows. I mean, back years and years ago, he played on the CMA award shows with the Bill Walker Orchestra for nearly 20 years. He played on the Statler Brothers shows. I can talk about him for forever because he did so many things. But he played on a lot of television specials, but he played on the Grand Ole Opry starting when he was a teenager. And
when he was a teenager?
He was a teenager with the Louvin brothers, and when he passed away, he had been on the Opry for over 61 years, longer than any musician has ever been on the Opry. And on his 60th Opry anniversary, the Grand Ole Opry named the band room, we all called it the band room, they named it the Michele Capps Music Room. But he was so humble, Jimmy was, that when somebody would come up and say, oh, Jimmy, look, this is so neat, you know, the Michele Capps Music Room, and he'd say, they put it up there with Velcro so they could take it down real easy. And of course, you know, the Opry's like, it'll never come down, it'll be there from now on. And he was still playing the Opry, you know, when he got sick. And so somebody said, in fact, I think it was Keith Bilbrey that said, well, Michele, he never got fired and he never had to quit. And I'm like, that's a blessing, because we talked about when he should retire, and he never had to make that decision.
No, he didn't.
You know?
You know, when you walk in to the back entry, there's the big plaque of Michele Capps.
Like I said, he was so humble. And he had been there for so many years. In fact, he always said, when people would say, "How long have you been on the Opry?" He would say, "I came with a building, and I'm not talking about this one." He was talking about the Ryman, But he
Did he
felt,
start with, yeah, of course he started with the Ryman.
yeah. And he said he just felt so blessed, and he never bragged on himself, not even to me. I would have to ask him. I'd hear a song and it would sound like him, and I'd say, "Honey, did you play on that?" And he'd say, "Yeah." And I'm like, if it'd been me, I would have been saying, "Oh, honey, listen, I played on that," But he was he was the most humble, kind human being that I've ever known. He loved to joke and tease, but he was quiet with it, so you really had to listen because he could zing you, and you didn't realize it. But
Who did you know who is person who influenced him in his life or his music or he looked up to?
As a child, of course, he listened to the Grand Ole Opry, and he was hearing Chet Atkins, and he was listening to Spider Wilson. And Spider, Jimmy didn't realize it, but Spider was just a kid too, and he was already playing on the Opry. But he had a lot of heroes. It's hard to name, because he considered, his friends that were great guitar players. He would tell them, you're my hero. But so many session players have told me that Jimmy was on the very first session that I ever played on, and I was so scared. And Jimmy made sure that I felt like I belonged there just as much as anyone else. He made me feel so comfortable.
Is that where you met him?
I met him on a session. I came here to record an album, and thankfully the studio owner hired Jimmy as the band leader. And I couldn't have been any more blessed because, I was in good hands, and B.G. Adair, piano player, and Billy Linneman, who played on the Opry. And it was just a wonderful group of people that he put together. We had no idea that years later we would wind up married. We had no idea.
So how old were you then?
I was in my 20s.
Okay, you're in your 20s.
Yeah,
all right.
I was in my 20s.
And so
Don't ask me how long ago that's been.
Hey, you were in your 20s, you came to Nashville. Were you living here in Nashville?
No, and I really didn't. So I was traveling. The job that I had, I was traveling a lot. So, I would come to Nashville and visit. And when I did, after meeting Jimmy and Billy, who both played on the Opry, they would clear me to come backstage at the Opry. And that turned into a job for me at the Opry that lasted 25 years.
We're going to talk about your life with the Opry, television, some of the shows that you've been on with, your life with Jimmy, and some of the heartbreak. And we're going to talk about it when we come back. Michele, tell me your time at the Opry.
Well, I started just visiting backstage. The staff band didn't really have anyone to help them. If someone changed a song, they had filing cabinets full of charts. They used the Nashville number system. And so one of them would have to go running back there, to pull a chart. Well, I learned where everything was, so I just started helping them. And so it turned into a job that became a 25-year job, which was such a blessing, to get to work with that, that group of musicians. But I took care of charts for the members and for visiting, artists. And so I would find out what songs they were going to do and go, pull their music. So I was running all over the stage like crazy.
It's amazing that behind the scenes you have no idea what's going on.
No, and the pressure, if it had ever really sunk in how much pressure there was, because I've had people say, "What if you put the wrong chart out there?" And I'm like, don't even say that. They'd be playing the wrong songs for Vince Gill, and that would be terrible.
But is a lot of pressure.
I loved it.
Was there any moment that you thought, that you can remember, or it's like,
There were a lot of, last minute things that happened, because Vince, he was one to change his songs last minute. you know, he'd do this, and I'd go over there right before he's going to do a song. He said, "I've decided to do so-and-so." And I'm like, "What key?" You know, and so I'm handing out charts and running, and I'll say, "Stay where you are. He's doing another song." You know, he's changed the song.
How does that work, though, if the band knows that he's going to be singing this and then he switches?
They look at that chart, whatever I put in front of them. That's what
So
they
is
play.
it electronically or?
It is now. They're
Okay.
using iPads now. But then it was paper charts. And I tried, so the musicians would make their own notes on those charts, and I would file them in a certain order so that I could hand them out. I made sure the drummer had it first because he could count the song off. The drums, bass, and piano came first, and then everybody else. I'm still out there running sometimes when the song is being kicked off. And they knew that when they saw me running, they knew there was a change.
Something to change.
Yeah.
See, so much is going on, we don't even know what's going on.
Yeah, but it was fun. It was fun. I've gone up and down those hallways, you know, yelling out musicians' names because they're fixing to miss a spot because they, you know, they're back there talking and they didn't realize they're fixing to be on. I've even busted into the men's room with my head turned and yelled their name out. "You're on!" You know, but
And they seem to get on there.
oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. So it was fun.
Did you go to the 100th celebration?
I didn't.
What an amazing show.
Yeah, wasn't it though? And it's so amazing that my Jimmy was there for over 61 of those 100 years. He was there longer than any musician ever. I wish that he could have been here to see the 100th because he loved the Opry so much.
So you got married. Did it just blossom from the Opry, or?
It did. It did. It from our friendship because we were best friends first, you know. So, you know, it was several years later. So we knew each other so well. We just, it got to where Jimmy would be playing, and if there was a song that the lyrics were really, you know, getting to him and touching his heart, he would turn and look at me, and because my chair was right behind the drums, and he would look at me and I would look at him, and I mean, you know, we knew, you know, and whether it was happy or crying or whatever, you know, but we were just so, I don't know, we were just like one person. We just became like one person.
It's beautiful.
And so
you kept it private, though, didn't you? You keep your relationship for a while?
We did for a while. And because, you know, of the age difference, a lot of people too, you know.
Was that hard for you? I mean, if people said, "Oh, you know, there's a big
it really
age gap."
wasn't. I didn't care. And I used to tell people, I don't feel an age difference because we were raised conservative, both of us, and raised, you know, in the church. And so, you know, we had so much in common. We didn't feel that age difference. And so, but we did at first. We didn't make a big issue out of it. You know, it was like people figured it out. You know, they could see how we looked at each other, and they could tell that we
got
were
married
in love with each other. So we got married. It just made working together even more special to us. We didn't care what we did as long as we were together. So Jimmy asked me one time, he said, "If I didn't play guitar, would you still love me?" And I sat and thought about it, and I said, "That's really tough to answer because I can't separate the guitar from you." I said, "Now, if you're asking me if I'd still love you if you weren't a legend," which he didn't think he was, yes, but I can't separate the guitar from you. It's an extension of you. I said, because he really did. He played from his heart. It was like he was speaking, even though he didn't, you know. And that's why, and he had the title for his book, The Man in Back, for years, because he never wanted to be at the center mic. He wanted to enhance the song and the singer. He wanted to complement the song and the singer. It was never his idea to be in the spotlight.
Where was your faith together?
We read the Bible a lot together. He was quiet with his faith, but Jimmy prayed a lot. We read the Bible together and discussed, you know, what we read. And I mean, if he thought that he had done something that would offend God or anybody else, he immediately found a place to pray and beg for forgiveness. And he was so tender-hearted, and there was no doubt of his faith at all.
Well, you lost the love of your life, and now you're on a new path, and we're going to talk about it when we come back. Michele, you mentioned about your dear friend Hazel Daniels.
Yes.
Charlie's wife. But Charlie and Jimmy were good friends.
Yes, they were. They were really good friends. They knew each other as kids in North Carolina.
Isn't
they
that
were both
amazing?
raised. It is. Charlie was a little older than Jimmy. But Jimmy, Jimmy started playing on the radio when he was 12 years old. So, they became really good friends when they both wound up in Nashville. And so when Jimmy passed away June 1st of 2020, Charlie and Hazel, I had met Hazel, but I knew Charlie more because of the Opry. They were trying to comfort me. And a week to the day, Charlie passed away. And so Hazel reached out to me, and we just feel like that God has put us in each other's lives. And she's helped me through some of the toughest times of my life, and I pray that I have her. So she's really been a blessing to me. What a dear lady. What a dear lady. If Charlie Daniels loved her, she was a dear lady. And he did. He did. He treated her like a queen that she is.
Let's talk about the time that Jimmy passed during COVID.
Yeah.
But he didn't have COVID.
He never got COVID. He never got COVID. It started out with vertigo, and he had vertigo before, so we just thought it was an inner ear thing. But apparently he had some internal bleeding, and they didn't find it in time. And so he passed away from that. So we weren't expecting it. In fact, until the day he passed away, we didn't know what was going to happen.
And it was a hard time during that season because you couldn't really spend time with him, could you?
When he was in the hospital each time, I could not be with him. And so it really made it hard. But the last few days, I was blessed to get to spend the last 5 days with him. And so I'm thankful for that, But we didn't know it was our last 5 days by any means. But so the day he passed away, it was quite a shock to me.
I know it's been very hard. A lot of people.
It haunts me still. It haunts me still because, we were so wrapped up in each other. He was my world, and it totally changed everything for me. I didn't think I could go back to work for the Opry, so I have not, even though I've talked with Dan Rogers, the manager, a couple of times, about coming back and doing something at some point. But it was just so hard for me to be. He was the Grand Ole Opry to me, So.
And it's been several years now.
Yeah, June 1st this year, 2025, it will be 5 years. And so on that anniversary, I have done some really special things out at the cemetery. And so I'm going to invite the Opry and the Hall of Fames that he's a member of, Musicians Hall of Fame, North Carolina Music Hall of Fame, and just, everyone that he touched their lives, I want to invite them. We're going to do like a celebration of his legacy, I guess. Mm-hmm. If he saw what I had done, he'd come back and kill me because he was so humble. He would have never wanted that kind of attention, but it's like he didn't brag on himself when he was here, so I'm doing it for him.
Well, you said that he would, the legacy sign was Velcroed? Or
yes, yeah.
Because
he said, they put it, there were Velcro. So
what are some of the special things you're going to be doing for that?
Actually, we're going to... Gus Arundel with Springer Mountain Farms is going to do a reception for us. There'll be some music, some of the Opry members and friends. We'll have music, and just so I'll go ahead and say that the walkway is a very special one, and some special features, and I don't know if I should say what they are, or if we should let everyone,
We can keep it a secret, and then they could come out and see it.
and then they can
But
come
it's going
see
to
it.
be, it's very
It's
cool.
very special.
Very special.
He
very
would have
sweet.
never dreamed that we would have done.
What would he say to you if you'd say,
He would say, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm honoring you because he earned it.
yes.
He earned it." One of my favorite sayings that Jimmy said was, "If you're patting yourself on the back, no one else has a chance to. And it only means something when it comes from someone else."
So
That
true.
was who he was. And so he's not patting himself on the back. Me and all the people who loved him will do it for him, And of course, he's in a better place than all of us.
How has your faith gotten you through this?
Oh my. When he was really sick and I was kneeling at my chair, but I'm just crying and wailing, and I'm like, "God, what, how can I do this? What, please heal him." I was begging God to heal him. And it was like I felt and heard at the same time. And I'd never had this happen as much as I had grown up in church and had the gift of the Holy Ghost and, all of these things. But I'd never felt this. But I felt and heard him say, "Trust me, trust me." I immediately stopped crying and I said, "God, I do trust you." And I didn't realize, I thought it meant that Jimmy was going to be healed. I didn't know that it meant it was going to be okay for him. Trusting God that Jimmy was going to be okay. And then after he passed away, I'm kneeling at that same chair, and I couldn't understand why the doctors couldn't find what was wrong in time. And so I'm just praying and crying and like, "Lord, how could they have missed this? How could this have happened?" And once again, and this is only the second time and only time this has ever happened, I felt and heard him say, "I don't make mistakes." And I immediately stopped and said, "God, I know you don't. I know you don't make mistakes." And what I've learned from all of this is that we all know that God is in control, but until something happens like this, you don't really realize that no matter what you do or how much money you may have or not have, or God is in control and he has a plan. And thank God he is, because this world would be a mess if we were in control.
You are producing now music and...
Yes, I just produced a gospel album on Mo Bandy, and I had the Oak Ridge Boys and Dwayne Allen's wife, Norlie Allen, sing on a song that the Chuck Wagon Gang did, because Norlie had sung with the Chuck Wagon Gang before her and Dwayne ever married. But thankfully, it was before Joe Bonzel passed and before Norlie passed. So we were so thankful. And the Isaacs are on that same album.
Isaacs too.
So, and Ben and I did harmony on the rest of it,
I can't wait to...
Yeah, it's a great album.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. I'm sure you have blessed so many people with your story. Thank you, Michele.
Thank you so much.
My friend, are you suffering from a broken heart and lost the love of your life? Like Michele said, trust him. He knows what he's doing. He's in control. This is today's Nashville. This is faith.